So welcome everyone again to, this is our fourth webcast in this series on what we call sort of the Cloud Service Management Deep Dive webcast series. All of the recordings as well as the presentations are shared on the community site. So if you go to communities.ca.com and find the CA Cloud Service Management community, you'll see all of these. I will say we've had tremendous attendance and feedback on these, great audience every single week. So thank you for attending. That shows that these are adding value and they're interesting to you. So we'll continue with these. I think next week we have another one on automation that focuses on the app connector, or essentially is creating your own custom connector. That's the next continuation, and we have a couple more after that. I think we still have about three remaining on the schedule. I can't remember off the top of my head, but we'll put all the calendar invites on the community, and I'll continue to email those out to the team as well. Just a reminder on logistics, all lines are on mute, just to prevent background noise. And if you have any questions, feel free to ask them on WebEx chat, or we'll take a break a few times to take questions on the phone as well. I always like to introduce the team. So this is your CA product management team. I'm sure you have other people you work with at CA. Myself, I'm Rich Graves. I'm the product management team based out of Jacksonville, Florida. My focus is on customer experience, interacting with our customers and making sure that you have a good experience with us in the product and outside the product as well. Our lead speaker on automation today is the owner of our automation component, Raj. Raj is based out of Hyderabad in India and is our lead on automation, has a wealth of experience in both application performance management and service management, and he'll be the speaker on this call today. We have many of the other product managers on the line helping out with questions as well. So quick agenda. So I'll give a very brief summary on Bamboo. If you haven't heard this pitch before, probably all of you have heard this pitch now, so it'll be redundant, but I'll keep shortening it every week. But it's for people that are still new. We have a lot of new customers coming in as well. Additionally, we'll go through the automation overview in presentation mode from Raj, and then Raj will spend most of his time on a demonstration before jumping back and has a summary and questions. There's a lot of slides in this deck that are really meant for your review after the call. Raj did a nice job of setting up step-by-step how you do these things, what different components of the solution are, that we don't want to go through point by point in a webcast, but are very useful when the presentation is uploaded to the community, so just be aware of that. So real quick on Bamboo. So if you're not familiar with this release, this was something that started rolling out in our data centers in May and is closing out in our North America data center very soon. There's three key areas we focused on and really trying to be more service-centric. So giving our customers the ability to focus on services, not tickets, and focus on designing those services, automating those services, both the delivery and the fulfillment of those services, the support and delivery of those services, excuse me. And then lastly, measure. So what this really relates to, in this vision and this focus, the theme for this release, first is on design, is being able to manage the work that goes into creating those services. So a simple ad hoc IT project management for the service management team. So what does it take to, coordinate, troubleshooting and work related to an outage? What does it take to plan for a new service? What does it take to plan for a change? All those things happen today. They happen in spreadsheets, they happen in email, they happen on wiki sites. The challenge that we heard from organizations was that they're happening outside the IT service management system when they relate to everything that's in the IT service management system. So there's the Project Center console, as well as we've really focused on simplifying the process to create new services. So that service definition is, excuse me, very wizard and guided approach to that. Very simple. Step one is you put in the basic parameters, you define your subscribers, your organizations, you link them to catalog items. All that the users walk through in one sort of flow in the tool without having to jump around and know where to go next. Next is on automate. So on automate, that's related to the support processes. So our workflow processes now have been improved dramatically to be able to build the support processes to manage requests and incidents and changes and problems. It's a much more visual process and connected with the automation component that Raj is going to talk about today. And the automation component really is about automating workflow inside and outside the tool. So being able to connect to third-party systems, web, cloud-based and on-premise-based systems, and Raj will go into a lot more detail there. Lastly is on measure. So on measure, we really thought it was too difficult to measure services. The fact that we might have out-of-the-box reports, you might have to create your own custom reports. We really wanted everything to be there that when you saved that service, we start measuring that service immediately. So things like mean time to resolution, number of unique requesters, the good and bad metrics of a service, we measure those immediately, and you can keep tabs on those on a day-to-day basis inside the service view console. So I think that's the real key parts of Bamboo, just so everyone understands, why we built these things, what's the value to you as a customer or partner. So now I will hand it over to Raj to jump into the automation deep dive. So let me hand you controls here, Raj. Okay, you should have controls now.
Thank you, Rich. Can you hear me?
Yep, I can hear you.
Okay. Thanks for the introduction, Rich. I'm going to do a deep dive on automation. So as Rich mentioned, automation is used to automate a bunch of tasks you may have as part of a process. So for example, you are doing the HR onboarding process and you want to provision a new user, a new employee on various different systems, in the backend, servers, or, could be your SAP system, could be your, SSO system, could be various systems that you want to run all of them together in sequence, right? So you can, instead of connecting to them each individually, manually, what you could do is you can create a sequence of steps and then automate that and then plug it into your employee onboarding process. Similarly, the password reset is something that we hear quite often. So you could have a connector to an Active Directory server, and then you can deploy the process for password reset. And so we also have similar ones for DevOps, and the other good one is you can also create connectors on the fly, which I'm going to cover in the next session, which you can use to connect to any third-party services and create connectors and create process flows using these third-party services. And we have two flavors. There are services that are on-premise, and there are services that are on the cloud. You can automate a process that includes either of those services or both. So, for example, in our scenario, Active Directory could be your on-premise service, and you may want to provision a new instance or new test environment. You may want to create a new test environment in Amazon Web Services. That's a cloud-based service. You could provision a new workflow in Amazon Web Services. And the beauty is, once you define the workflow and then once it is invoked into once it is integrated into the process flow, you can just invoke that as part of the ticket flow using one-click button option. I'll walk you through that. So the main benefits of the automation are, it helps you save time, and the biggest benefit is no programming is required. So you don't need to write a single line of code to connect to Active Directory or connect to daily Dell web service, which is hosted by Dell, or could be any third-party API or any built-in connect using so connecting to Amazon Web Services or connecting to VMware. You don't need to do any programming. Everything is predefined here. You can use the predefined content, and you can build your workflows and then automate your process flows with that. And what it gives you is the efficiency. These are errors would be less prone for errors because it is automated, and you don't have switching costs. Analysts spend a lot of time in between moving between tools and then copying the context from one tool to another, and then copying the context to the ticket and updating the ticket with relevant information. It saves a lot of time. All that happens in just with one click. So foundation for automation is connectors. We have the connector framework where we have one connector for each of the external systems. For example, we have a connector for Active Directory, connector for Clarity EPM. As you can see, we have connectors for both CA products as well as for external third-party tools or servers. We have a connector for Exchange, Amazon EC2, VMware, PowerShell, Secure, SSH, and SMTP SendMail. And some of these are on-premise and some of these are cloud-based services, as I mentioned. So let's see what is the connectors, what each connector has. Right? The connector comes with a predefined connector comes with the definition of credentials and input and operations. So, for example, if you want to connect to VMware, the kind of how you identify a VMware server is ESX host, and it requires username, parameter, and a password. And similarly, if you want to connect to an Active Directory, the signature of Active Directory connection is different from VMware, and VMware is different from Clarity PPM. So each connector has its own signature of the endpoint and the set of operations that are supported by the connector, and the format for the credentials. It's all predefined. All you need to do is for each connector, you just need to set credentials and then specify the operations that you want to use. And all the connector details are specified here in the wiki documents. It's listed out here in this page. You will get access to this slide deck. You can copy this URL and then directly go to the front end to see all the supported operations and credentials. Let's take a look at what is needed for on-premise connectors. As you see, the cloud CSM is hosted in cloud, and your servers like Active Directory and CA Release Automation, they are hosted in your data center, right? So we need a way to connect from the cloud service management to your data center. So what we have is a POP, point of presence, that is needed to be deployed and installed in your environment. It's a very lightweight container that you can download from CSM the connector library page, and then you can install it. We have support for both Windows and Linux, and it runs with any 2 GB machine, basic configuration. So all it does is it carry forwards the instructions for to and fro from cloud service management, and then carries the messages back to cloud service management. So the information required for installation is all predefined. As you can see, the IP address here in the install screen is all given. All you need to provide is the username, password to connect to your, you need to provide the proxy details that are required to connect to the external world from your data center. So we also have, for each connector, we have a bunch of templates. For example, for EC2, we have templates, workflow templates that will help you create a provision and use instance in EC2, restart an instance, start an instance, stop an instance, terminate an instance. These are all various workflows you can use depending on your need. You can just copy them and create a workflow, attach it to a process flow, and then you can implement the end-to-end within few minutes. I'm going to walk you through the entire process in the demo. So here is the process of creating automation workflow. So what you can do is we generally recommend using our out-of-the-box template instead of creating one from scratch. So we have a lot of templates. You can just copy one of the templates and you can get started with that. So as you can see, either you can create a new workflow or you can just copy it from an existing template. So it has basic 4 sections. It's a wizard. It has basic properties, which requires name, description, and then the second one is Design Studio, where you identify the steps for the workflow and set up credentials for each of the connectors. The third step is configuring input-output parameters for each of the steps, and then finally publish the workflow after testing it. So again, the documentation for key areas are copied here. You can just get in there and then look at the documentation for relevant sections. So I will walk you through a demo right now.
Any questions on the phone while Raj is transitioning to sharing his desktop? Okay. And Raj, I can see your desktop, your Chrome window.
Okay. So what you see here is a Automation Center page, the home page for the Automation Center. So here what you can see is the various workflows that are executed in the past and their statuses, whether they are successfully completed or failed, if it is failed, what step it is failed, and how much time is spent in executing the workflow. And the most important thing is what you see here is time saved by running these workflows. So total 9 hours has been saved so far by running all these workflows. And you can also configure the time period and refresh it to see the data that you're interested in. And this one, the Automation Center also has, I will walk you through the details of each of the execution after I show you how to create a workflow. So the workflow library has, this one, the Automation Center has a workflow library and the connector library. So I will show you the connector library. Here you see all the available connectors. And you see the Amazon EC2 connector, Cloud Service Management connector, SMTP connector. For example, you can open the Amazon EC2 connector and you can see the credentials have been configured for this the server already. So this Amazon EC2 connector requires a region endpoint, secure access key, and a bunch of other information for configuring credentials. And you can also see the operations supported by Amazon EC2 connector. So, and similarly, you can also see the CA release automation here. CA release automation has a different format for connecting to the server. It requires username and then password, the URL, the preferred POP container. And it has supported operations to retrieve release status and run deployment. These are the two operations supported by CA release automation. And you can review the connectors, all the other connectors available here. Active Directory connector. You can see that operations supported by this connector are add group, add user, delete user. And the other information that's available here is the POP container status. So for example, you see that the POP container is not configured for this VMware, but it is there for SSH, secure shell. Here. Okay, so I'm going to show you how to create a workflow using a template. So these are the templates available for filtered by shell, but I'll show you all the workflows templates available. So here what I'm going to do is, I'll take this is, I will show you a template, copy the template, right, and giving it a name when you copy. So what this workflow does is it provisions a new EC2 instance and update the CSM database with the relevant information, such as creates an asset in the data in the CSM, and it updates the ticket with the asset. It updates the asset with the ticket information, and it updates the ticket with the work log, and it closes the ticket. So all the workflows that are not complete will be in the draft stage. You can see them in the draft. And here I'm going to edit this. Edit workflow. So this is all the basic information. If you want, you can replace this image with something else. and basic name and description, and then the workflow solution will help you group all the workflows into one bucket. So if you have a bunch of workflows related to Active Directory, you can put them all together into one category. It's a simple category of grouping things. The next step is Design Studio. These are all the steps that are pre-configured in this template. Template is copied now. This has all the steps that I described here. Create a provision EC2 instance and create an asset in the asset database in CSM, and relate asset to service ticket, update the work log, and close the ticket. And you can see that there is a small delay timer and a small format work log text in between. These are the connectors here. And if you want to add some more delay, you can add delay here, or if you want to massage the data, we have a small Groovy script that's available inbuilt, and it can take the input and output parameters from each of these steps, and then it can help you massage the data. So if you want to add another step, you can just click on this connector list, and then just say, hey, I want to add a PowerShell connector at the end. Right, so after doing all of this, you can run something else here in the PowerShell. So this adds a new step to the flow. So I'm going to remove this for the demo purpose. So the next step is, you can see that the status is incomplete here. The status is incomplete because the credentials have not been configured. So I already defined credentials for this Amazon EC2 instance that I showed you in the connector library section. If you want to add a different account for your EC2, you can add another set of credentials here, and then you can associate with this workflow. Okay, so the credentials for EC2 have been configured, and then the next step is create an asset in the CSM database. So this requires CSM credentials, which I already have created. And the delay timer, it's just a delay for 10-15 seconds, it doesn't require any credentials here. And the next step is the CSM step, which requires CSM credentials. And then format work log text. Now I'll show you this here. This allows you to write a small script, Groovy script. Again, this is copied from the template. Template already has this. So what it does is it gets the instance name variable, which is provided as the input, and it gets the another variable called instance identifier, and it prepares the work log by combining all of these, and then it creates another variable called work log text, which will be used in the subsequent steps. So the next step is add work log, so update the ticket with the work log. And then the last step is close service request. After everything is done, we are just closing the ticket.
And for those of you on the phone, there were several questions that have been coming, people sending directly to me, which is fine. I'll certainly respond to those. But please do send them to everyone so everyone can see the question and comment on it. A couple questions that came in were pretty basic on permissions and what are some of the new connectors. So I'll address those, but just want to let everyone know, feel free to ask any questions on WebEx. Just send them via chat to everyone.
Okay. So since it is copied from the template, you don't need to configure anything in the input-output parameters. It's all pre-configured for you, but I'll still walk you through these input-output parameters and show you what's configured here. You can use this as a starting point and then customize it. For example, if you don't want this step, you can just delete it. If you want to add another step, you can just add it and then move it around. So, for example, creating an EC2 instance requires the three parameters: instance type, instance name, and AMI ID. AMI ID is it's the kind of EC2 instance that you want to create in the cloud. So there are, for configuring the parameters, you have 4 different types of parameters actually. One is, you can see 3 here. Fourth one I'll show you in the next step. Provide it later, which means we are saying that end user will provide this parameter while creating the ticket. At the time of creating the ticket, he will provide this data. Second one is assign value now. So when this provided later will be, the value will be different for each ticket and each execution of the workflow, if it is executed manually. And the second one is assign value now. This is what it means is you are assigning a constant, which will remain same across all instances of the execution. And the third one is assign from workflow variables. Like I showed you in the previous screen, you can create workflow variables and then populate them with the Groovy script, and you can use that in these steps. So, for example, you can just add another one. So I'm going to show you, this. For example, if I want to add another variable here, I'll say provide it later, and then add new. So you can define this thing. Region endpoint, and you can provide some default value. My region. Okay, I'm not adding this right now. I'm going to cancel this. But these are the input parameters, the 3 input parameters, and the fourth one is output from previous step. So we have 7 steps in this sequence, and this is available only for 6 steps because the first one doesn't have a previous step, right? So starting from second step, you will see that you can. So for example, in this for creating an asset in the asset database, we are getting the instance identifier from the first step. That's what has been specified here. So basically, there are 4 types of input parameters. One is provided later, which means it's provided by the end user, and assign value now is a constant that's provided during the workflow definition, and that's constant across all executions. Third one is copied from the previous steps. You can select a step and then you select the value from that particular step that you want to use it for this particular step. The fourth one is a workflow variable. So like you saw in the previous screen in the Groovy script, we populated the work log text by getting the variables from the workflow. Okay. So as you can see, all of these, each of these steps have similar parameters configured. I mean, these are all the input parameters for this particular step. Similarly, relate service to relate the service request it has 2 input parameters, and those are passed as input parameters for this step. Okay, so we are done with the input-output parameters, and the next step is to test it. So you can test this by providing a bunch of information here. This requires AMI ID. Okay, I shared the entire screen. I'm going to stop sharing the screen, and I will just share my. Sorry for the inconvenience. Okay.
Well,
can you see my screen?
Yep, we can see it. And if you hide the download bar there, you might get a little bit more screen real estate. No, don't worry about it. It's on the bottom. But don't worry about it, Raj. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So organization is a PMR one. This is for creating an asset. Instance type is event.micro. This is something related to Amazon. I'm going to create a demo instance, and then service request identifier. Since I'm not using the ticket, I need to specify some service request here. So basically, I'm going to provide some ticket. So since I don't have a ticket here, I will create a ticket. Just give me 1 second here. This is a dummy ticket just to execute the workflow. Okay. See, if I am publishing it as a workflow, and if I use that service catalog item for submitting the request, the ticket identifier is automatically derived for executing this particular workflow item. So here, I created the ticket called with the identifier 100-61, so I'm going to use that here. So I'm running this workflow manually just to make sure that it is running fine. So we can go back and check the status in the home page for now. Okay. So here you can see that the a new workflow execution has started. Here you can drill down and then into the details of this workflow and see the details. So here you can see the input parameters that I have provided in the dialog there for test workflow, and these are the in case something is going wrong with the workflow, you can diagnose where exactly the problem is. So here you can see that few steps have been completed, and I'm going to refresh it to see if there is any more latest data below. Right. So it is still executing. So this is the data for each step. So the instance provision on the EC2 has been done. You can see the input parameters for the used by this step, and you can see that output parameters are also specified here, are shown here. You can see that the instance identifier, this ID11, is created. So the same instance also is created in the asset database. So an asset with this identifier has been created. So if I go look for this in the asset database, I'll be able to find that asset. Then the next step, relate asset to service request. Now similarly, if something is going wrong, you can also see the error message in this table, in the same table for that step, and you will see which step is having a problem. That will be highlighted here in this. Okay, so the workflow is kind of successful. We'll see again, check back after some time, but most part of the workflow is executing fine without any issues. So I'm going to refresh this to see if there is any progress. Yes, so you can see that it's executed 100%, no issues. Okay. Okay, I'm going to, now that the validation has been done, I'm going to publish this workflow. This is the next step, final step. So here I will provide a name, is Bamboo Demo Instance. Publish as a service request. See here I have an option to specify this as publish this as a service request or as a change request. And I can attach this to an existing process. So I created a process flow. I think you have seen the process flow and process designer demos in previous sessions. So here I have created a process called generic process for this workflow demonstration. And then I'm going to execute this particular step after perform action. So there is one more. There is one more step I need to do here, which is mapping workflow inputs. So remember, I provided the ticket identifier manually there. So here I'm going to do it automatically. So what I'm saying here is the first service request identifier in the workflow, I'm going to map it to the ticket identifier. So ticket identifier is, we know the ticket ID, and then ticket ID, that ticket will be updated with all the information. So I'm going to publish this right now.
Cool, Raj is doing that. Any questions on the phone? I see a couple more. We've been answering them on the WebEx chat, so take a look at those. There might be some that are helpful to you. One question that did came up that's worth mentioning while Raj is finding that is the delay timer. So what's sort of the purpose of the delay timer? The delay timers are useful in those circumstances where, Amazon EC2 may give us response back that says provisioning has started, but you may want to have a gap between that and whatever the next task was, so that the command was successfully received on the other end, but that doesn't mean it's ready to progress in your workflow just yet. So that's the reason for the timer on many of those, is that it takes time to execute the transactions on the other end, after you get a successful response. So any other questions, feel free to ask on the WebEx chat.
Okay, there was a problem in that, so I'm going to publish this again. I didn't see that. You execute after, perform action, and yeah, I'm going to map the workflow inputs, and then service request identifier mapping is doing it again, and then publish. Okay, the workflow will be published as a service catalog item. So workflow has been published, so I'm going to go back to the service catalog to check if there are any catalogs. Okay, we see, so this is a service catalog UI. You might have seen this before. So I'm going to search for the item that I just created. I don't have to, it's right on the top of the list here. I can, so now I can create a ticket here. So this is I need to provide a description so that the right process is involved. And here, whatever I provided manually as input, I'm going to, so this is the end user providing all this input. My demo instance type p1.micro AMI ID. I'm going to copy it from here. So as you can see, these are whatever I showed as provide later is being provided by end user. I'm playing the end user role right now. I'm creating the ticket. I'm going to save this. This will be this will trigger the process flow that I attached. So as you can see, the activity history, the process flow generic process has been applied here. And what you can see is the action that will trigger the perform action. Remember, the workflow will trigger after this perform action step. So I'm going to trigger this perform action step. So here we have two options. One is execute the workflow now, and the other thing is, there could be some actions that require running it in the midnight. So you can also schedule the workflow at later point in time. So in this demo, I'm going to run it right now. This will do the same. This will run the same demo. So here, so this workflow is going to execute, and meanwhile, if there are any questions, I can answer those questions.
I don't see anything new, Raj, on WebEx chat. Just at this point, I just made my window disappear. So I'm not seeing anything right now on WebEx chat, but again, feel free to ask anything. If there's any audio questions as well, you can unmute yourself, #6 or #6 on your phone.
Okay. So while we, so there is a question here. You provide an overview of how the variables are managed. I see a step to be published. Okay, so I can show you that briefly while this is executing. So data mapping section has two variables right now, right? So we go to this Design Studio, and this is Groovy script. It's not something else, but this is a Groovy script. Here, what you can do is workflow variables. So this variables UI has multiple things. There are some of the items that are provided as input for each of the steps. So, for example, AMI ID, instance name, and instance type are part of the create provision EC2 instance. And there are two variables that we created here for this particular. And in this template, we used a notation for the created variables which are not part of connector. So there is one variable called EC2 instance identifier and another variable called work log entry. There are two variables that we are creating here, right? And if you want, you can add another variable here. My name, and give it a name, and you can provide some default value. So, and you can take this the variable and then you can populate this in the EC2. You can populate in the Groovy script. Okay, we'll show you the Groovy script once again. Here, it's a small Groovy script. Instance name is coming from one of the input parameters for that's given by the end user. That's why you don't need to have any. This is global variable, which is provided by end user. And the EC2 instance identifier is something that we created in the workflow, and we are storing it in the local variable. And the work log entry is something that we are creating now with this definition. Amazon EC2 instance, getting the instance name, and then get the instance identifier. And it's a small script, and then we are setting and populating this work log entry variable using this local script variable. So there are some workflow variables which are shown in the capital letters here: EC2 identifier and work log entry. These are workflow variables created in this workflow. And there are certain variables that are provided as input when we are running the workflow. Instance name and instance type are, and for example, this one, instance identifier, is generated by one of the steps. Right, so instance identifier is also populated here. So, did this answer your question? So I also provided this. It might sound complicated. That's the reason why I captured each and every screenshot here. Whatever I'm doing, I provided as step-by-step instructions in the PowerPoint template. That we are walking you through right now. So Rich will share that, and you have all these steps on how to do all of these in the PowerPoint. So the other thing that we need to. So did that answer your question?
One follow-up question from Gary related to: is the script automatically created, or does the admin creating the automation workflow have to create that script?
So for all the templates we have, most of the scripts are automatically created. You don't need to create a new script if you are creating using our template. If you have something new, what you can do is, what I recommend is, so for example, if you are doing something related to Active Directory, but it is not exactly same as what you're doing, you can take the template and then copy the template, start with the template, make customizations, and then you can use that. Don't have to create everything from scratch. And all this process, once you're familiar, it takes only a couple of minutes. It won't take much time. Okay, so we'll go back to the ticket and then see the status here. I think it is this one. We'll check the activity history. Okay, let me open the ticket. Okay. We'll go back to the home and then check if there is a new instance here. Okay, so provisioning automation instance has failed for some reason. We can look at the details why it has failed. code. As you can see that this step is failed, and you can see that EC2 instance failed to perform operation. Underlying error does not exist to user DNR. Okay, I think it is a typical demo problem that I'm running into. But you have seen the process and you understood how it works. So let me try submit another request, and then we will move to the next part of the demo. The best interest of time. Just move.
And one question that came up, and it'll be helpful to talk about when you're on the ticket itself. There's some of the parameters that you have on the ticket related to the automation workflow. Can you hide those from end users so they don't modify them, or at least make them read-only?
Which ones? You can configure. You can change the parameters. So are you talking about the inputs that are provided by the customer, provided by the workflow? If you want to hide that, you can remove it from the workflow, or you can provide it as a constant. So for example, t1.micro, if you want to create always the same type of instances, you can just hide it.
Okay.
Okay, the ticket has been created. I'm submitting another one. I'm running this perform action. Okay, we'll come back to this later. So meanwhile, we can validate this in the Amazon EC2 also. We created one manually. We can see that here. Okay, as you can see, mine is one. So this particular one which I just submitted, this is going through initializing and pending. I don't remember. Bamboo demo instance is the previous one. It is running, but there was a communication failure for some reason. So as you can you can see that the instance is being created on the Amazon EC2 instance. So while we see this in the ticket, we will just go through. I just want to quickly walk you through their workflow, which has the SSH, which requires POP container. So the workflow is so I copied another workflow which is there for SSH, the PowerShell, secure shell. So I just copied this particular template, and the process for on-prem or cloud, it is the same thing. There's no difference. You see, configure the demonstrator, the design studio the same way as you did it for the regular connector, the cloud-based service, and you provide the credentials here, and then you copy the script. Right, and then you do the data mapping the same way as they don't need to do data mapping because it's out of the box template. I can just you publish it the same way as you publish the other workflow. There's no difference. So let's see the status. Well, are there any questions?
No other questions at this point. Just keep in mind we have about 8 minutes left, and I don't know if you want to cover anything else in the PowerPoint.
Yeah. So here, the workflow that I submitted, the service request that I just submitted is working. Action taken, change the status to post creation, and then Amazon EC2 instance. My inst one has been provisioned, and you can see that this asset has been created. You can go to the asset database, and then you can check for the asset here. So this is the first one. You can see here. You can see that the asset has been created. So there is some other thing that I want to cover here. So we have reports for automation. And there are two reports. You go to the advanced reporting, and under advanced reporting we have automation licensing overview. While we are in this page, I want to show you the. I want to talk about the licensing. Automation is included. The basic package of automation is included as part of the core cloud service management. As part of this, you get 50 devices and 5 external systems. So 5 external systems. The external system is if you see the presentation, if you remember the presentation, we have things like Clarity and then VMware, Active Directory. External systems which are part of CA are not counted as external systems. For example, you can connect to CA release automation, and then you can connect to Clarity without any concern. But if you want to connect to an Active Directory, that is counted as an external system. If you want to connect to some external third-party server that you may have internally, that is counted as an external system. Devices are for SSH and PowerShell. Each device we connect from cloud service management, each server we touch is counted as one device. So here is a report that will help you track how many systems and how many devices have been touched. And similarly, we have another report which gives you a high-level idea of the automation execution. So this will show the number of workflows successfully executed and number of workflows failed. So you can see all of that here in details. So these are the two reports available, and so there is one guardrail we have implemented just to make sure we are not merely bringing down the system, which is in a given 24-hour time period, we would only allow 100 executions of a workflow. So if you have a need for running more than 100, we don't know if the 100 number is the right number, but to start with, we kept 100 as a limit based on our internal testing and the performance testing. But in reality, it may be different. So if you have a need to run more than 100 executions in a day, just let us know. So with I think I covered all of the important aspects of core workflows, core automation center. So if there are any questions, you can ask now.
So any other questions on the phone? I'm not seeing anything new. Let me just double check on WebEx chat. But if there are any questions, feel free to ask them on WebEx chat, or again, all lines are on mute, so feel free to unmute yourself and ask an audio question with #6 or #6.
There's a lot of documentation available. You can go to the wiki.ca.com, and then you can look at all these predefined content, and you can see what kind of for a given Amazon EC2, as you can see here, what is the credentials format for this, and what are the input-output parameters, and what are the operations supported. Create instance, and what are the input parameters it requires, and what are the output parameters replied by that operation. Those are all given here. You can also see how to create a automation workflow. Everything is whatever I covered is there in the documentation. In the presentation that we have, I'll go back to the presentation. The presentation that we have also listed down all the steps that I just walked you through. Step-by-step instructions on how to add, remove steps. What is Design Studio, what is data mapping, how do you do data mappings. Everything is articulated here in detail. So you just download the PDF, and then you can try it out on your own. If you have any questions, please let us know. You can ask a question in the community, or just send an email to Rich or Cloud ITSM team. Rich, I think that's all I have for this demo. Do you have any closing comments? Are there any questions?
Yeah, one other question just came in. Can processes be initiated externally? So I think what that question is asking is a workflow process in automation, can that be executed from a web services command, from a, triggered from another system?
No, not right now.
Okay. Okay.
Actually, I just want to show one more thing quickly, really quick. So we added a feature just to get just to increase the adoption of the automation and to make it more useful for the actual analyst. So if you go to a ticket center and then if you open a ticket, this is something that needs to be configured. But you have access to the automation from the ticket itself. So for example, you can see that automation assistant. This is something we added in this release, and what it shows is a list of connectors. Whatever you saw there, are also shown here. You can just, for example, here if you want to, you're triaging an issue for the router, and you want to test the availability of that router, you can just connect to the SSH connector from here, within the context of a ticket, and then you can just run operation. You can run a command, execute a command, and then you can provide that action here, right? So ping 10.12122.1. This is a random IP, but you can also see all the optional parameters. And when you execute this action, the action would be executed in the context of the ticket, and the workload get updated. So you can see that activity history would get updated. See, for example, added the workload. So in this context, from this context, you can just ping an external server, and then this is providing some output from there, and it's a random number. I'm not expecting a successful result from there. But the point here is that you can run any connector. I think the things that are most useful here are SSH and PowerShell things. You don't have to go to a different console to run commands, and you can just do it from within the context itself. So, any questions?
Just to add some more comments on this, so this is something that you're not going to see automatically in your instance of Bamboo. It's a configuration parameter you need to turn on from administration. I would highly recommend that you turn this on and play around with it in your staging environment to see if this is something that's useful to your analysts. I think it's very dependent on the organization and the type of support that you do today. This is something that we see as becoming a much bigger feature in future releases, and we wanted to get feedback from our customers and our partners now. See what you think, what you like, what you don't like. Can we add, different security, different options here? What do you want to see? So this is really put out there as something we want your feedback on. So feel free to reach out to us as a product management team to submit, feedback on the community and let it be discussed there. Because we really want, we see this, we see a vision for this longer term. But we want to get it out there and get it in your hands as soon as possible and see what you think now, and we'll certainly improve it and work in an agile fashion to increment on that and make it better in the future. Okay. Any other questions or comments? Okay. Well, we will go ahead and end the call now. I'll hang around on the WebEx chat for another minute or two to see if anything else comes in. But thank you all, and thank you, Raj, for all the demo and the presentation, and we'll get this on the community in video and presentation form later this week. So thanks, everyone. We'll talk to you next week.
Thank you all.